Hello, everyone. Hello. Thank you for being with us after a very strong and emotional session. My name is Virginie Herz. I'm managing editor at France 24, international news channel that broadcasts in French, English, Arabic, and Spanish. And I was the creator of a show called Actuel in French and the 51% in English on women's rights. Today, I'm here with Annika Joeres, who is a correspondent in France for the Die Zeit, plus CORRECTIV in the investigative magazine. And we are going to have a session on which title is Quite Normal Men, the Pelicot trial and its consequences. So just a little context, the Pelicot trial, it was Dominique Pelicot was charged year in December for having drugged his wife and raped her and inviting men to rape her. So he was charged, he is now sentenced for 20 years in jail, and 50 men were charged and accused also. Annika Joeres, you followed and you covered this trial, who was a real shock in France, but beyond France too, I think. You went there 11 times. Can you tell us first, what was the atmosphere? What was it like? What is the backstage?
It was a heavy ambience, of course, and when you arrive at the court, nobody was prepared because it was just 2 days or a few days before the trial that Gisèle Pelicot decided to make it public. So it was one of the first trials ever for rape that was public, and so she decided it, and that's why she was a heroine quickly because of this courageous decision. So then you turn up, and there are so many journalists that can go into the room. And when you arrive as well, there are many, many feminists in front of the court, and it was every day there have been more and more people, mainly women, to encourage Gisèle Pelicot, to give her some gifts as well, praline, chocolate and flowers. So there was always a warm welcome for Gisèle Pelicot, and you got all the accused men who arrived as well. Not all of them, because I think 16 have already been in prison during the trial, but most of them, so 35, have been still free. They were still, they could leave the trial afterwards. They went to the bakery as any other men or women as well, and so they arrive as well with you, with the journalists, in the morning. And then you can go into the room, which is a small one, a lot smaller than this one, for example. So it was a lot too small, but as I said, they didn't expect the trial to be public, and they did not expect neither that there would be so many journalists, because there were really journalists from around the world, even from South America, Australia even. So I think we have been around 200 journalists, sometimes even more. So it was always a little battle to get into the room, because everybody wanted to sit there, of course. And the striking thing in the trial room then was that you are really very close to the accused man. So any journalist who was there was a bit shocked about this. I really a lot closer than we are now. And the first day, I didn't recognize immediately who all these men were, because you get full packed room, you got the lawyers, other journalists that you don't know, so you don't know who's a journalist, who's maybe the accused man. And then afterwards you find out, okay, you are very close to this man who did these horrible, horrible things. So that was quite, it was a thing that I was really not, that I couldn't forget in the evening, to be so close to this man.
Yeah, so very close to the accused man, but also watching the videos, because this was, as you said, really the big, well, what shocked everybody, this is why Gisèle Pelicot is praised too, that she accepted that, yes, this video of her being raped could be seen by everyone and by the journalists, and that the shame has to be, put on the other side. But How is it, as a woman, as a journalist woman, to cover that? I know that, for example, I have journalists from my team or for France 24 who covered the story, and they said at the same time there was like the development of a sorority or sisterhood among journalists, but at the same time they feel really very, very bad, and we proposed them psychological support when they came back from the coverage. What was it for you?
Yes, I was very affected as well by this trial, because I mean, as a journalist, you nearly always cover sad things for mainly, but this one was special because you have been so close to this crime, and you were very close to Gisèle Pelicot as well, who was there every day, and so I couldn't. In the evening, I was still thinking about the trial, and when I was not there, I was reading every piece of article that I could find about the trial, so I couldn't let it go and think of other subjects. And then my editor as well proposed me to have a kind of psychological coach, which I accepted for the first time. It wasn't necessary before, and she had kind of, for me, a little bit surprising ideas, but it really helped. She said you have to get a distance to the accused man, and
Physical distance.
But it was not always possible because you can't choose a seat. But psychological distance, and she said, yeah, it might be helpful. I don't know, to have very spicy bonbons or something sweets, for example, to get a distance, to get you back into your body, and
to get connected to your body.
Yeah, to get recentered was her idea, and also not to be alone after the trial, because in the first days I then went to the hotel room writing the article, and it was a lot better than afterwards to eat out with other journalists, for example. As you said, there was a big solidarity between all the journalists who were there, because everybody was so affected that we needed to get together.
What is the challenge as a journalist to cover this story? Because it's a story of sexual violence. How do you cover it as just as possible, as precise as possible, as human as possible, but at the same time as neutral as possible?
That was a big challenge to write it in a neutral way, and it was also difficult to decide which kind of details you want to put in the article, because I didn't want it to be a little bit voyeuristic. How you say?
Somebody has to help us. Voyeur. How do you say voyeur in English? When somebody likes to watch. Voyeuristic. Thank you.
So that was tricky to write it down, and yeah, it was special. And for example, what I couldn't do, what others did, but then there were some people as well who afterwards said that was a wrong decision. I didn't watch the videos, for example, because there was also my coach who said that. Of course, I can decide it, and my editor as well, of course, said I have the freedom to choose whether I want to watch them or not, and the judge always warned the people in the room to say, okay, now we will watch this video from this rape, for example, and then you can leave the room, which I did, because I spoke to other journalists who said that they have still the image in their mind, and they can't get rid of it, so I always went out when there have been the videos. They were only shown when the man just said, no, it wasn't a rape, and it wasn't clear for me that she was asleep, for example. Then it's okay, as a proof, we have to watch now the video. And when you see them, which I didn't, but many did, and described it afterwards, there was no doubt about it, that she was unaware, unconscious, and that it was a rape. Yeah.
What were the reactions you had on your articles? Did you have more reactions than for other articles? What type of reactions did you have?
Yes, it was always, until the end, which was a big surprise for the editors as well, because that's unusual. It was always the most read article of the day, or sometimes even of the week. Because the interest was so high for this trial, and I think it is always due to Gisèle Pelicot, because she was there speaking out, saying really strong things, and you have this trial against so normal man, as we put it, just normal man. So really, they have been fire workers, a journalist was among them, a manager. So any kind of jobs they did, they have been family fathers or divorced, or it was just really, as you take just a group of normal people out of society. And I think those two things that you got on the one side, Gisèle Pelicot, who was so courageous, and on the other side, the accused man that were just normal men, made it so interesting and appealing for everybody, I guess.
I didn't ask you before, so we talked about solidarity among journalists, women journalists, but were there men journalists? There were men with journalists covering also the story. Did you feel like any difference, or was there this solidarity too? Open it, discussions that you couldn't imagine having with men journalists before?
Yes, there have been maybe a quarter of male journalists, I would guess. And they were part of the women group as well, so I couldn't see a difference in there, and they were very shocked as well, and they were kind of, sometimes they said to me, yeah, I'm ashamed of my my genre, I'm ashamed of my gender, my colleagues who did this, or the other man who did this, and they were as shocked as the female journalists as well, I guess.
So coming back to the title of this session, the Pelicot trial and its consequences, what do you see as main consequences of this trial, first in France and maybe then in Germany?
I think first of all there was this enormous attention that usually these kind of crimes don't have. So that's already a changing thing, and I know that for other trials now as well, there are more and more people in France at least who say, okay, I want to have this trial public as well, because Gisèle did it, so I can do it as well. And so you get this huge attention to the subject, and to these kind of crimes as well, because to drug women, or sometimes even children, is a lot more common than everybody would have suspected before. And her daughter, Gisèle Pelicot's daughter, he founded an association already before, but now they say, okay, they got so many calls as well from women who say, okay, now I understand what's happening to me. So, and around the world as well, there have been many letters written to the advocates of Gisèle Pelicot, or to other, to judges as well, to say, okay, I think I'm in the same situation than Gisèle Pelicot. I think my husband or my friend or my colleague is giving me some chemical poison to rape me afterwards. So there was this strong consequence, so that many women could for the first time understand what's happening to them, because as you know, for example, Gisèle Pelicot, it happened to her 10 years, but she never understood what's going on, even though there were so many physical damages to her. She sometimes slept 20 hours. Doctors thought maybe she has Alzheimer already, or there was a lot of misjudging as well from the medical side. And I think they are now more aware of these kind of crimes and how often it could happen. So when they receive a woman who has all the symptoms of being raped and can't remember anything, now they do better and take all the proofs, blood test, for example, to see whether there were drugs involved. So that is a good consequence. What I still miss as a consequence for Germany, but I guess it is in other countries as well, is that how we write about this kind of criminality in general, because always, especially in Germany, we had these elections, and just before these elections we had many discussions about how dangerous migration would be. So it was a very right-wing pushed discussion that we had in Germany. whereas the most dangerous place for women is at home. And many of you might know this number, that 80% of women, I think it's valuable for men as well, they know the man who is raping her or who has raped her, because it is the uncle or a colleague or a neighbor or a friend or her own husband. And I think this dimension is still completely underreported, and because it would have been good to that the whole journalistic work about crimes recognizes these facts, that most crimes, not only rapes but also in general violence, is done by people you know, and not the stranger, and not an unknown man at 4 o'clock on the street, for example. So that is, I think, a consequence that would be good to to develop.
That's a wish that you have. Coming back to the consequences in France, there was also like legal or political consequences, because there is this law that was discussed. Can you tell us a word about that, about the notion of consent, that the consent is now in the law concerning rape?
Yes, so there have been some changes in the law as well, that, for example, the woman or the partner has to make it clear that she's consent with a sexual relation. Thank you. And that is new. It was a long time discussed. And also what is new is that you can have a Anzeige erstatten. Sorry, Anzeige erstatten. Yeah, you can pursue in the hospital, so it is much easier now when you think you are a victim or you are a victim, that you can pursue the man, and that you have help in the hospital as well, and because now they are more aware of these problems, so you are I hope so, a lot better treated when you arrive as a victim at the police or in the hospital, for example.
Yes, it's really important, because this notion of consent, you have it, for example, in the Spanish law, I think in the Canadian law, and more and more in 27 law, 20 countries in Europe, I think. But basically it means that the woman or the man, it can be a man also, has to express clearly that he is okay for a sexual intercourse, a sexual relation. And during the trial, or during trial of sexual violence or rape cases, most of until now, or until recently, the judge in France said, well, the woman didn't resist. And we know that there is something called dissociation that makes that a person who is sexually assaulted can't resist. In 70%, they just paralyzed. So that is a big change. And another thing too, and that this has to do with cultural patterns in France, that the men, and maybe you can tell us more about that, some of the men who raped Gisèle Pelicot, invited by her husband, said they didn't think that he raped her because, they didn't ask her, but he was okay, the husband was okay. And so they thought that if the husband is okay, they didn't have to ask.
Yeah, there have been really some incredible statements from the accused man. Very few of them just said, okay, yeah, I knew it was a rape, and I witnessed here that I was aware of it. And many others, I think 2/3 of them said, no, I thought, some of them said, yeah, I think it was between the couple, it was a play of them, it was a game of them. Of course, without asking her, because she was never conscious when they arrived. And also, I mean, Dominique Pelicot, he had really a very a detailed strategy how the man should treat Gisèle. So, for example, they have to warm up their hands, not to wake her up, for example. And all these things were really clearly hints that she wasn't okay with it. But they had some really strange statements which showed as well their idea of women and consentment, for example, then they said, okay, the husband was there, so I could do whatever I want with her if he's okay with that. So as if he was a judge, what you can do with his wife. So that I think that was also something very interesting in this trial, that these men who were prepared for some years about with the lawyers what to say in front of the judges, that they said so stupid things still. I think it's just so deeply in them that they just couldn't speak out differently. So it was really stunning, yeah.
Thank you very much, Annika. We have, I think, 5 more minutes. I don't know if in the audience you have questions to ask or questions concerning this trial. Don't be shy. It's really the occasion, the opportunity. Yes, we'll come 2 questions here. I don't know, well, we'll come up with a mic. Just wait a minute. And another question here. So 1, 2, and behind also. Thank you. Can you introduce yourself, please? And
yes, I'm Raffaella Menichini. I'm an Italian journalist. Yes. What do you think would have happened if Gisèle didn't have the videos?
Yeah, very, very important question. That's what their lawyer always said, that if there haven't been these videos, everything would have been different, because she was one of the few who had the proof of being raped, and in most of the cases it is not like that. But because he filmed any rape, maybe he didn't film everything, but they had loads of proofs, and I think, yeah, I think this trial just wouldn't have happened if the videos weren't there.
Thank you so much for the discussion. My name is Cara. I work for Amnesty International. I just wanted to ask, so in the region where the trial took place, what has been the impact specifically amongst the women there? And kind of my understanding of it is that the men were from a very localized place. So I just wanted to ask what the impact has been in that place.
Yeah, I spoke to some people who came from Mazan, which was the name of the village where everything happened. And they were a little bit shocked, because now everybody knows Mazan, and probably will never forget that there have been so many rapists. But the thing is, Dominique Pelicot could find all these men so easily. It was just a forum, an online forum, where he was writing, yeah, I will drug my women, and you can come by and you can rape her. She really in these words, and very quickly he found all these men, and nearby as well. I think, of course, it's a coincidence that it was in Mazan, but it just shows that probably in any town you can find these men, because of course it's the usual little village, nothing special about it, but still he could find them. I think it was only in 20 kilometers away. One neighbor even was one of the rapists. So I think for these Mazan people it was very shocking to see that, but it's just a symbol for how easy it is to get some rapists come to your house if you want to.
yeah, and it was the mayor, I think, of Mazan who provoked outrage when he reacted, when he was interviewed by a journalist, I don't know which journalist, but about the coming trial, and he said, well, I don't see the point, nobody was killed, and this really provoked outrage, and so I guess that's in a little village, it's just that people suddenly consider that you can have as much crime and sexual violence as in the big city, and that it's really systemic in all kinds of, well, in all type of society.
Hi, my name is Neha. I'm a journalist based in Nairobi, but I do a lot of work on sexual violence. And my question is about the word neutral, which you used earlier during the session. And I'm just curious sort of what is your definition of neutral or objective in this case? And also, what responsibility do we have a responsibility as journalists to be neutral and objective in a case like this where there's clearly a right and a wrong?
Yeah, I mean, neutral, to be honest, I think there's no neutral article ever possible, so for whatever kind of subject it is, because you choose the people that you quote, for example, so there isn't a neutral article, and these ones even less. No, I don't mean you have to be neutral, probably in the way that it doesn't get too emotional, for example, which it was a couple of times, of course, and many journalists wrote completely different to, if you know how they write, usually they have been writing completely differently about this subject and being there in this trial situation, which was so special, as I said. So I think when you read the articles, you feel that the writers have been affected by the subject probably more than for many other subjects. So I think that is what you see. So yeah, neutral is a bit misleading because it doesn't exist anyway.
Yeah, neutral is probably factual, that you don't need to put more emotion or comment. It's just you stick to the facts, and that was the meaning. I don't know if we still have one last question. Yes, one last question. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I just had a question. So I'm French, so I followed the story in France. I just had a question about the impact of this case. Was it because it was a new story, because it was so horrifying, or because it was, I don't know, personified by Gisèle, but what was the factor for it to be so impactful in France and internationally?
I think, yeah, you named it already. It was this, that it was so horrible and that it was normal men. So everybody was really thinking, oh my God, this is possible. So it was really a very unusual trial. But I think Gisèle Pelicot as well played an enormous role because she was kind of giving hope in this horrible trial. And I think if she wasn't there or didn't say anything, I think it would have been just too horrible to follow up every day. And I think with her strongness, she gave many people the hope that there's something better to come, maybe, and a better discussion about this subject. So I think these two together, and especially how she was speaking and how her appearance really was very important, I think, for the big attention to this trial.
Thank you very much, Annika Joeres. Thank you for everybody for being with us for this session. You can applaud Annika Joeres. Thank you very much. And have a good afternoon and following sessions. Thank you.
Thank you.